Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The barrel of the gun was cold against his temple, but the asphalt biting into Julian's cheek was colder. Please, Julian gasped, the word forming a white cloud in the freezing alleyway air before shattering under the weight of a heavy boot pressing down on his shoulder. I just need one more week. My commission check comes in on the 5th. The calendar doesn't care about your art, pretty boy, the thug sneered, grinding his heel into Julian's scapula. The pain was white-hot, a sharp contrast to the numbing sleet falling from the charcoal sky. It was New Year's Eve. While the rest of the city was popping champagne and counting down the seconds to a fresh start, Julian was counting the seconds until his life ended in a dirty alley behind a jazz club that had fired him 2 hours ago. The boss says time's up, the man growled, cocking the hammer. The metallic click echoed like a thunderclap in the narrow space. Julian squeezed his eyes shut. He was 23, alone, and about to die over his father's gambling addiction. He waited for the flash. He waited for the end. Instead, he heard a wet, sickening thud. The pressure on his back vanished instantly. Julian opened his eyes, blinking through the snow and his own tears. The thug was gone, or rather, he was no longer standing. He was crumpled 10 feet away, groaning, clutching a shattered wrist. Standing between Julian and his tormentor was a silhouette cut from the night itself. The man was massive, draped in a cashmere coat the color of midnight. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a natural disaster condensed into human form. He held a lit cigarette in one hand, the embers glowing like a demon's eye in the dark. With the other hand, he adjusted a leather glove, as if he had just touched something filthy. "You're making a racket," the stranger said. His voice was a deep, resonant baritone that vibrated in Julian's chest, smoother than whiskey, but heavier than lead. "I'm trying to make a phone call." The thug on the ground scrambled for his dropped weapon with his good hand. "Do you know who I am? I'm with the Viper clan." "You're dead, you." The stranger didn't run. He didn't even rush. He simply stepped forward, his movement fluid and predatory, and kicked the thug in the jaw with a precision that spoke of military training, or something far worse. The crack of bone was louder than the earlier gunshot would have been. Silence reclaimed the alley. Julian scrambled backward, pushing himself up against the brick wall, trembling uncontrollably. He had traded a wolf for a tiger. The man turned slowly, his gaze locking onto Julian. Under the flickering yellow street lamp, his features were illuminated, sharp, aristocratic cheekbones, pale skin, and eyes the color of frosted steel. He was terrifyingly beautiful. "Get up," the man commanded. It wasn't a suggestion. Julian tried, but his legs were jelly. He slumped back down. The man sighed, an impatient sound, and tossed his cigarette into the snow. He walked over, towering over Julian, and extended a hand. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be on the floor with him," the man said. "Up. Now." Julian took the hand. The grip was iron strong, hoisting him to his feet as if he weighed nothing. Thank you," Julian stammered, his teeth chattering. "I don't have money to pay you. I don't want your money," the man interrupted, his eyes scanning Julian's bruised face with a clinical detachment. "But you are bleeding on my shoes. And since you just ruined my meeting by bringing the Vipers to my doorstep, you owe me." "Oh, you," Julian whispered. "My car is around the corner. Get in." "Why would I get in a car with you?" Julian asked, a spark of survival instinct finally flaring. The man smirked, a dangerous curve of lips that didn't reach his cold eyes. "Because the Vipers travel in packs. That trash on the ground has a radio. His friends will be here in 2 minutes. You can stay here and greet them, or you can come with me." He turned and walked away, the tails of his coat snapping in the wind. Julian looked at the unconscious thug, then at the retreating back of the stranger. He made his choice. He ran to catch up. The penthouse was a fortress of glass and marble, suspended high above the city lights. It smelled of expensive leather, ozone, and isolation. Julian sat on the edge of a velvet sofa that probably cost more than his entire life's earnings. He held a crystal glass of brandy the stranger had shoved into his hand. "Drink. It helps with the shock," the man said, walking to a sprawling wet bar. He had shed the coat, revealing a tailored charcoal three-piece suit that accentuated the breadth of his shoulders. He poured himself a drink, facing away from Julian. I am Nikolai. Julian froze. Everyone in the city knew the name. Nikolai Volkov, the head of the Bratva's Eastern operations, the alpha of the underworld. He was rumored to have ice water in his veins and a heart made of stone. Julian, he whispered. I know, Nikolai said, turning around. Julian Vance, pianist, son of Marcus Vance, a man who currently owes 40,000 to the Viper clan. How? How do you know that? I make it my business to know whose mess lands in my territory. Nikolai walked closer, invading Julian's personal space. He leaned down, placing a hand on the back of the sofa, boxing Julian in. The scent of sandalwood and tobacco was overwhelming, intoxicating. Your father skipped town 3 days ago. The Vipers can't find him, so they came for the next best thing. Julian looked down into his amber drink. I didn't know he left. He abandoned you, little bird, Nikolai said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. He left you to the wolves. Why did you save me? Julian looked up, meeting the steel-gray gaze. If you know who I am, you know I'm worthless to you. Nikolai paused. For a second, a flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes. Not pity, but perhaps curiosity. He reached out, his thumb brushing the bruise forming on Julian's cheekbone. The touch was startlingly gentle, at odds with the violence he had displayed in the alley. I have a headache, Nikolai said cryptically. He straightened up and gestured to the corner of the room. There, bathed in the glow of the city lights, stood a Steinway grand piano. It was black, sleek, and covered in a thin layer of dust. You have a piano, Julian noted. It came with the apartment. I have never touched it, Nikolai said. I haven't slept in 4 days, Julian. The silence in this place is loud. The noise in my head is louder. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes narrowing. You played at the Blue Note before they fired you. I've heard you play once. Passively. While I was conducting business. You want me to? Play for you. Play. Nikolai commanded, moving to sit in a large armchair facing the window, his back to Julian. If you can make the noise stop, you can stay. If not, I throw you back out to the Vipers. It was a test. A cruel, bizarre test. But Julian had no other options. He set the glass down and walked to the piano. His hands were shaking, his knuckles bruised. But as soon as he sat on the bench, a familiar calm washed over him. This was his domain. He lifted the fallboard. He didn't play a chaotic jazz number or a festive holiday tune. He played Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor. The first notes rang out, melancholic and haunting, filling the vast, cold room. Julian closed his eyes, pouring his fear, his loneliness, and his despair into the keys. The music swelled, a weeping melody that spoke of lost souls and broken promises. Across the room, Nikolai Volkov closed his eyes. The incessant buzzing of strategy, threats, and calculations that plagued his mind finally went quiet. The music was a balm, a cool stream washing over a burning landscape. For the first time in years, the tension in his shoulders uncoiled. Julian played for an hour. He flowed from Chopin to Debussy, weaving a tapestry of sound. When he finally stopped, the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. He turned to look at the armchair. Nikolai was asleep. The glass was tilting dangerously in his hand. Julian walked over softly and took the glass from the alpha's loosened grip. Up close, Nikolai looked younger, the harsh lines of cruelty smoothed out by sleep. He looked human. Julian found a cashmere throw on the sofa and draped it over the mob boss. He should run. He should steal a watch and flee. But the snow was howling outside, and down there, death was waiting. Up here, there was a monster, yes, but a monster who slept while he played. Julian curled up on the rug near the fireplace, the warmth of the hearth lulling him into a dreamless sleep. The arrangement was simple. Julian played, Nikolai slept. For 3 days, Julian lived as a prisoner in a gilded cage. He had the run of the penthouse, access to a fridge stocked with gourmet food, and a wardrobe of silk pajamas Nikolai had ordered for him. But he couldn't leave. The elevator required a key card, and the stairs were guarded. They rarely spoke. Nikolai would return in the evenings, smelling of gunpowder or rain, his face a mask of exhaustion. He would point to the piano, loosen his tie, and collapse into the chair. Julian would play until Nikolai's breathing evened out. But the dynamic shifted on New Year's Eve, The real celebration, the gala. Put this on, Nikolai said, tossing a garment bag onto the sofa where Julian was reading. Julian unzipped it. Inside was a white tuxedo, tailored to perfection, with silver cufflinks. What is this? We are going out, Nikolai said, adjusting his own black tie in the mirror. It's the governor's gala. Everyone will be there, including the Viper clan. You're using me as bait, Julian realized, his stomach dropping. Nikolai turned, his expression unreadable. I'm making a statement. You are under my protection. If they want you, they have to go through me. It is the only way to clear your debt permanently. That sounds dangerous. Life is dangerous, Julian. At least this way, you're dressed for the occasion. Nikolai walked over to him. He reached out, his fingers lingering on Julian's collarbone as he straightened the shirt. The touch sent a jolt of electricity down Julian's spine. It wasn't fear this time. It was something darker, hotter. Do you trust me? Nikolai asked softly. You're a criminal, Julian replied, his breath hitching. I am, Nikolai agreed, stepping closer until their chests brushed. But I haven't let anyone hurt you since the moment I found you. I keep what is mine. Mine, the word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Julian looked into those steel eyes and realized he didn't want to run anymore. Okay, Julian whispered. The gala was a whirlwind of crystal chandeliers, fake smiles, and tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Julian stayed glued to Nikolai's side. The alpha moved through the crowd like a shark in a koi pond, predatory, respected, and feared. Nikolai's hand rested possessively on the small of Julian's back, a burning brand marking his territory. Volkov, a greasy voice called out. They turned. Standing there was a short, rotund man with a scar running down his face. The butcher, the head of the Vipers, flanked by 4 bodyguards. I heard you picked up a stray dog, the butcher sneered, eyeing Julian with malice. That boy belongs to me. His father's debt is with my house. The debt is bought, Nikolai said calmly, sipping his champagne. I transferred the funds to your Cayman account 10 minutes ago. With interest. Julian looked at Nikolai in shock. He had paid $40,000? Just like that? It's not about the money anymore, the butcher hissed. It's about respect. You took him from my men. You made us look weak. You are weak, Nikolai said, his voice dropping an octave. You prey on artists and old men. Touch him again, and I won't just break a wrist. I will dismantle your entire operation, brick by brick. The butcher's face turned purple. He signaled to his men. It happened in slow motion. One of the bodyguards reached into his jacket. Nikolai didn't hesitate. He shoved Julian behind him, shielding his body with his own. A gun appeared. Screams erupted from the crowd. Nikolai moved faster than Julian could comprehend. He grabbed a champagne bottle from a passing tray and smashed it across the gunman's face. In the chaos, another bodyguard lunged for Julian. Julian stumbled back, tripping over a gown. The bodyguard grabbed his arm, fingers digging in. I got him. Nikolai turned. Seeing Julian in the enemy's grip, flipped a switch inside him. The cool, calculated boss vanished. The wolf emerged. With a roar of pure rage, Nikolai threw himself at the man holding Julian. He didn't use technique. He used brute force. He tackled the man, driving a fist into his throat. He pulled a concealed, jagged combat knife from his waistband, a movement so fast it was a blur, and pinned the man's sleeve to the hardwood floor. Mine, Nikolai snarled, his eyes wild, chest heaving. He stood over Julian, panting, his white shirt splattered with specks of red wine and blood. He looked terrifying. He looked magnificent. Security swarmed the room. The butcher and his men retreated, realizing they had underestimated the ferocity of Nikolai Volkov when provoked. Nikolai didn't care about the security. He knelt before Julian, ignoring the crowd, ignoring the chaos. His hands, usually so steady, were trembling as they cupped Julian's face. Did they hurt you? He demanded, his voice raw. Did they touch you? I'm okay, Julian breathed, staring wide-eyed at the man who had just turned into a monster to save him. Nikolai, your hand. Nikolai's knuckles were split and bleeding. He didn't even look at them. I don't care. Let's go home. The ride back was silent, but the air was charged with adrenaline. When they entered the penthouse, Nikolai didn't go to the bar. He didn't go to the chair. He cornered Julian against the grand piano. Why did you do that? Julian asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. You paid the debt. You could have walked away. I couldn't, Nikolai confessed, his voice rough. He looked at Julian as if he were the only source of light in the world. I told myself it was just business. I told myself I just needed the music to sleep. But it's not the music, Julian. It's you. He pressed his body against Julian's, trapping him. When I saw his hands on you, I wanted to burn the world down. Nikolai, I am a bad man, Julian. I have blood on my hands. I am darkness. Nikolai leaned down, his lips hovering inches from Julian's. But you are the first thing that has ever made me want to wake up. Don't ask me to let you go. I won't. I don't want to go, Julian whispered, lifting his hand to touch the sharp line of Nikolai's jaw. Nikolai let out a ragged breath and closed the distance. The kiss was not gentle. It was possessive, desperate, and consuming. It tasted of champagne and danger. Nikolai kissed him like a drowning man finding air, claiming every inch of Julian's mouth. Julian wrapped his arms around Nikolai's neck, pulling him closer, melting into the heat of the alpha. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone. He felt protected. He felt cherished. Outside, the clock struck midnight. Fireworks exploded over the city skyline, painting the room in bursts of red and gold. But neither of them looked out the window. Nikolai pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against Julian's. Happy New Year, Julian. Happy New Year, Nikolai. Julian replied, breathless. Play for me, Nikolai asked, his voice soft, vulnerable. Julian smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. Always. And that is how the wolf tamed the darkness, and how the pianist found his rhythm in the heart of a beast. If you enjoyed seeing Nikolai lose control to protect what's his, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you stay with a man who could kill for you? Or is that a red flag painted in blood? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Nikolai, tall, broad shoulders, messy black hair, sharp gray eyes, intense possessive expression, wearing unbuttoned white shirt with blood specks, black suit pants, holding man 2 protectively. Man 2. Julian, shorter, slimmer, soft brown hair, flushed face, wearing white tuxedo shirt untucked, looking up at Nikolai with mix of awe and desire, leaning against black. Grand piano. Background is luxury penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, fireworks exploding outside in night sky, dramatic lighting, cinematic composition, emotional atmosphere, intricate details.